Sam, you wrote a book. Awesome.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, mate. It's good to be back. It's good
It
to be back.
is
It's number
third,
three.
third, third time on. And I'll tell you what, I am super grateful because I think it was like episode 14 or something like that. Like we were just growing the podcast. I think even on Instagram, I had like 500 followers. And you were the first coach that made it seem like it was a privilege to be on our podcast. Like, not like they were doing us a favor. And I'm like, what a nice guy. I remember Ryan and I talking about this while. Like, that is a genuinely nice guy. So I'm always super appreciative of that.
Thank you, mate. Like I didn't even know that at the time.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important is, manners are free. They cost you nothing. And if someone is willing to open their virtual door and have a coffee with you, then you should at least show that appreciation because they're giving up their time. You guys were giving up your time to talk to me, and I was giving up my time to talk to you, and we had a great conversation. We had two very different conversations as well. So I never
Two
take
very
any,
different ones. Yeah.
you
And
know,
now, yeah. And you didn't have a book at the time. So this will be another different one. So looking forward to this.
people have to evolve, don't they? People have to evolve, and I think that's important. Especially coaches have to evolve. Um, but I was when I was working with Alex Gray when he was in the NFL, I got offered a job, and I told him I was like, "Oh, for this job." He was like, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
And that's wisdom right there.
And I was sat in front of a guy that had gone, was playing Premier League rugby at 18 and then won the first English born player to sign an NFL deal. And I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do something different. We'll just keep following this path and see where it goes.
That's right. So the one of the first things I always ask people whenever they have a book is what need were you trying to kind of fill by writing a book? Because I think like no one's just writing a book just to regurgitate the same exact information that's already out there. It's like you see a need, you want to address that.
Yeah. It's funny. Like the knock-on effect of writing the book has been quite powerful, many different ways. If I'm completely honest, you do hear lots of people talk about book writing, and they're like, "Yeah, I just wrote a book." No, it's the fucking hardest thing I've ever done in my life, um, and it was exhausting. It was emotionally draining, and it came from a really stupid idea. It was just like a really impulse decision. I was in a mastermind coaching group, and they had an author on who self-published 28 books, and he talked about it. I was really inspired. I was like, I'm gonna write a book, and then that was the start. And the need really for me at the time. This was probably 2 years ago now. It started about 2 years ago was that I was in a midst of getting frustrated with the way I was seeing coach education delivered, especially around speed and for team sports, and it made me quite angry. It made me angry because there's so much of um, the like what I call like the Mount Rushmore, like Verkhoshansky,
Mm,
Bondarchuk, Isurin, Zatsiosky, Mateev, those guys all their work is completely forgotten, and Chinese whispers has just taken its toll on the industry. And so that made me quite angry because we were talking before about like YouTube and stuff, and that's where I first started and like downloading stuff off Napster. Like I've got a 1988 version of Secret of Soviet Sports from Yeses, which was one of the first books published on Eastern training methods in the Western world. And it was
yeah.
um, that originally came from Tennessee. I got it on eBay, and 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 I was like, with the advent of hyper consumerism for short form, quick fix information, there needs to be something that cuts the tide and really try and reach into the past and bring all of those things forward. And that was from like the professional level because it's a book that's never been written before. Um, and in the way that it's there's nothing like it. But also on the other side, the emotional side for me, I didn't really know I was doing was really breaking my own prejudice I have of myself about being an academic because I'm dyslexic. And I was in special needs my whole life. Like I've got a master's, I've got a BSc, and I was the first person in my family to go to university. Um, and I was dyslexic. I am dyslexic. And I was like, that whole process was this fight between like on three fronts. It's like driving the
Mm-hmm.
profession,
Yeah.
leaving something behind, like that when I'm dead, that book will still be here. And I can safely say in my heart of hearts that I've done something progressive for the industry and left something behind that's bigger than me. Because there's no profit in writing books. There's no there's nothing, I have to pay for my own copies. So it's like, how can we how can I try and get something out that a coach can pick up who who's never read anything about speed before and use it, but then also a really experienced coach can read it and appreciate the nuance that's inside it. And we wanted it to be like um, starting strength, but also super training at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the goal.
That's awesome. So I guess one of the things that I particularly like is you classify speed in different ways. You go from general to specific to special to tactical. Can you like break down those things and then like along with that, like why just running in a straight line is not the answer if you're looking at sports speed.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you for calling it sports speed. And just like my name's Sam Portland, and my nickname was Sports. And my first dream was to actually, and funny enough, when I realized that, I was like, I'm Sportland, I can own a sports shop. That's what I wanted to do.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like that's amazing. I still might do it, but there's not a lot of money in retail. Um,
No.
so, but I could open this amazing gym called Sportland. That's what we could do.
Yes.
Um, but so so when I was writing the book, I had my desk and I got this for anyone who's ever needs to do any brain dumping. I got this like rolling. There's some in my office. Yeah, it's like just like whiteboard that sticks on the wall because I was renting a flat. We just moved to the south coast of England. I was renting a flat, so I just covered the wall in it, and I was just scribbling headlines and all the chapters and kind of what I wanted to discuss. And then I looked at it and I was like, that is all general. I've not all of those things that I've
Yeah.
just need to go in one section. And I was like, who's going to read a book called General Speed? And then that's when I was like, because been doing some teaching about Bondarchuk's classification system, and I was like, the reason why it doesn't fit into team sports is because it's not being made to fit. And the big thing that's different and the kind of like bodging of it, like the morphology of the classification is obviously with the Bondarchuk's classification, it's designed for throwing and single event disciplines and stuff like that. So where the competitive exercise is the event itself. Well, there isn't a competitive exercise in team sports. There are many different competitive exercises which are scenario dependent. If you take like American football, you've got blocking, route routing, pass coverage.
Yeah.
Like
And every position's different too. You can't just say football is this. Yeah.
exactly. So I was like, so that then becomes the tactical element that we can influence. Because if you speak to most team sport athletes and they go, "Oh, I want to improve my speed," and you say, "Why?" They'll always give you a tactical reason. They'll always tell you
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reason. This is why on the field. This is my evidence, not because I want to run a faster 40. Like so then I looked at it and I was like, oh, I was like Indiana Jones when he sees the crystal.
Yes.
I was like, oh, here we go. So then I had to start the book all over again. And after putting it off for about 8 or 9 months, it was there or thereabouts because I was just too afraid of it because I didn't actually have a clue how I was going to do it properly. And and so then that's when I was like, right, that's general speed, and that's specific because those two fit quite well from Bondarchuk's classification. General preparatory exercises, specific preparatory exercises. Then we had to understand actually from that point on, how does the sport start to interplay? Where's the thread of sporting activity getting pulled through it? And that's something that I don't think anyone's been able to do, and that's where a lot of the general versus specificist arguments happen. But also, the strength coach should just be the strength coach. Well, what we are is sport preparation coaches. And that's where I came, you see in the book with that pyramid, there's a red line. So you've got general speed and specific speed. Boom. That is
Yeah.
where that's that red line. And everything underneath that red line is to help us develop the game and develop the athlete's capabilities to withstand higher volumes and intensities of practice to master the technical skill outcomes driven by speed to perfect the game. And so that was where the thread of general, specific, special, and tactical speed start to come through. And because it was what I did with my players, and from playing, like I know you've played yourself, and hoping to get back out on the field again some point soon. Um, that's what I did. Like you always think, well, what notes and what mental notes have I got from the game this weekend that didn't quite work, and why didn't they quite work? What was I not doing technically, physically? So, and 99% of that never comes back from running in a straight line. So
Yeah, you're right.
when we think about how do we develop athletes to master the art of sport, then we have to make a we have to, I say the assumption it's not, we have to understand the clear distinction that running in a straight line in training and producing speed in a non-contextual environment is the most general thing that we can do. And so, and that comes back when I was working at my last club, the head of performance, he was like, "What metrics are you going to look after this year? What do you want to target?" And I said, "Max speed and acceleration. They're the two that we're going to track." Well, yeah, because they're the most specific things that can be influenced by general training. And, you know, as you can imagine, that kind of went down like a shit sandwich because they want to understand, what about strength? What about yo-yo scores? What about
Yeah.
these?
Yeah.
None of
Yeah.
it matters. And we all know the story is the story is. I don't work there anymore. Um, and so so and what I found again, like some of the more compelling reasons is that you look around, you go on YouTube, you look on social media and stuff like that. A lot of the things that are advocated as being like the next silver bullet for coaches to improve all revolve around just the development of general speed. And so that's where the idea came from. Well, let's start where everyone else finishes.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
true.
when
I
we
love that because I've always had that thought of like linear speed is one tiny piece of the puzzle. It's not close to the whole thing. So why are we just focusing on only that?
Yeah, yeah. And it's coach. I strongly believe there's a huge part of that, which is um, the role in which significance plays to coaches in their own identities. numbers that shift create significance for people, and it's one of our core needs. We need to feel significant about something in life, and that's what that is for coaches. Do we change the number? Do we move the number? Then we've done our job. When actually true significance is, for me, is actually knowing how much a small part of it plays. You know, um, everyone looks good in the off season, don't they? And with that, that's that driver. It's for me, it's I and the evidence, you know, that you do get a little bit of scrutiny. Well, how do you know this? How do you know this? Well, it's really easy to get lifetime speed, linear speed PBs out of team sport athletes because they have never used running as an exercise, because they can't, first and foremost, that first junction, which I've got my mission is to kind of give all that information away on channels and emails, and because we have a wholesale problem in team sport S&C that we never taught our athletes to withstand and endure sprinting to create speed adaptation. We can't use speed as an exercise to create change with you, which is
Yeah.
why everyone it spends too much time running fast and getting injured and breaking down, and not enough time developing. You said principle, for example, the specific adaptation to impose demands. They're not using that time to just develop the working structures of sprinting to unlock it as a useful exercise. So if you just do that, athletes will PB. You don't have to run them fast. It's the worst thing you can do, because it's like having you know, taking 20 kilos off of someone's back. They'll move because you just unlock that degree of specificity.
Yeah. I always thought too, it's kind of tough where coaches rely on just the linear speed numbers so much to like justify their role in the training
Yeah.
that they're scared to kind of go beyond that.
Hmm.
Because for like some tactical stuff, a lot of it like you can't necessarily like measure every single thing that happens on the field. It's a
Yeah.
lot of it is like how does the athlete feel? Do they feel better? Can they move better? And it's hard to then say like, well, the guys I'm training, they said they feel better, so I did a great
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you all the way on that. And it's what's really interesting about the role in understanding all these things is, excuse me, I think if a good chef knows how to balance things out because they understand the way that the tongue detects taste. Something too spicy is gonna burn your sweet and sour. You need the spice to hit your late. And that's the perfect example for me about understanding how having a high output, creating a high speed output for an individual is going to best serve everything that they do. Because, as we said, it's the most specific general capacity that we can influence. So everything else just is a downstream effect of it. So, with that in mind, we players can then endure 50 plays. They can endure 8, 9 games on the bounce like they have in England with the rugby. Um, the English Premier League, the guys are playing Saturday, Tuesday for like 8 months, and then they get 10 days off in the summer. And
Yep.
and so if in how do we directly influence or determine how well a player is performing? Well, all their technical markers will be better. They'll be the indicator. But if they're um, if we can look at their speed exposures, and American football could be like a really nice example to use it because it's quite prescriptive. So you've got
Yeah.
rugby, like they've got their first, opening play cards, and if a receiver's getting a good release, but they're not hitting its speeds on a fly, we've got a problem
Yeah.
because the capacity is not there. And it's not a case that he's not fast enough. He can't endure the speed.
Yeah. I don't know if you follow Joel Reinhardt at all.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
it was within the last couple weeks, but he posted a picture of, I'm assuming using like Catapult or something like that, some sort of like
Yeah.
GPS marker, but breaking it down by position within, I don't remember if it was a practice or a game, but how many exposures each position had at
Yeah.
90 to 95% top speed. And
Yeah.
then you look at it, and some guys within the same position group hit a ton and others did not hit as much. And
Yeah.
but there's a ton that you can gain from those things, kind of going back to what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's something that's really there's a in the data, I think it's in the data section in the book. I broke down some rugby data in a similar fashion. And it's, the argument that gets thrown up when looking at that is is the residual training effects. And I think coaches can hide behind the residual training effects argument because it means that we need to maintain barbell strength. And, you know, if we take the words of, Verkhoshansky, that maximum strength has zero indicator of special strength means, then that's just for a coach to know that we're maintaining strength. And when we place that in and amongst an actual, the goal is preparing for sport, that strength adapts and expresses itself in the context of which it's trained. So does speed. And so if we if we want to go, well, these guys are not hitting enough in the week, or we need to hit speed every 7 days and maintain strength and all those sorts of things, we completely devalue the role of what practice does for players anyway. Practice is
Hmm.
preparation. And when we sit and talk about residual training effects, for example, we have to understand that they are not and were never constructed in the role of team sports. They were never constructed with weekly competitive exposures. So they can't work in our environment.
Yeah. One thing that this is from years ago. I still use it to this day, but like the speed gate golf system, where it's
Yeah.
like getting the relaxation. And recently you were talking about like the importance of longer accelerations, but I always think when I think longer accelerations, I think you're just teaching relaxation and just better positions where, and a lot of times for team sport athletes, when they go all out right away,
Yeah.
they're actually not able to hit the same exact like top speed than they would if they kind of took that longer approach to it.
Yeah.
And I always go back to those kind of two things of like you teaching the relaxation right away with that like kind of speed gate, like as relax as you can, give me a 1-8 10 yard sprint or 10
Yeah.
meter, whatever you use. And then I'm like, I just love those kind of things, and they do build on each other.
Yeah. Because and it's funny, like one of the biggest components that you have with those two ideas is, when we apply pressure to a team sport athlete, it goes right back to the whole um, classifications of speed. And team sport athletes don't know how to run fast. They can run fast by their given talent, but they don't know how to run fast. That's why when you see, um, the pin-up of, oh, this freak athlete ran this fast with me, that freak would have run it on its own.
Oh yeah, that was
And
yeah.
it's those things. So do this training system because this freak Tyreek Hill did it.
Hmm.
Tyreek Hill could do whatever he likes, and he'll just be Tyreek Hill, for example. So so if we were to think about like, well, let's build this general speed out, well, relaxation has to become a huge part of it because when we are, as I said, when you apply that pressure, you create excessive tension when you need relaxation in the system, don't you? So with the speed gate golf and the long accelerations, for your listeners who've not heard that, what we're trying to do is specifically prepare the athlete to use running as an exercise and using submaximal variants of that as an exercise. The same way as you would you move from extensive to intensive means with plyometrics, extensive to intensive means with your barbells, 3 sets of 10, 3 sets of 8, 3 sets of 5, three sets of 3, for example, and creating giving ourselves brackets and giving ourselves bandwidths of which we can then start to intensify. And when I first started reading about speed and learning about speed, I got one of Tom Teller's books. And it's really funny the way that that is spoke about in some of the early preparation for track cycles. It's about understanding maximal recoverable volumes on track. And because the competition exercise, the goal is to win 100 meters or 200 meters or 400 meters. So you've got to create recoverable volumes within that. And for team sport athletes who are underprepared with regards to the specific exercise of sprinting, when I saw I'd been to a clinic that someone had proposed 250 meters of acceleration for a field sport athlete per workout. And I was like, have you ever coached a team sport athlete to do,
It's work. That's some serious work.
10 25s or,
Yeah.
even Summer Hanson's 10 by 10 stuff for some athletes would be quite a lot.
Yeah.
And was maintaining freshness as well, I think. And I love Derek Hansen. I love what he's doing.
Yeah, true. And I think part of it too is like he uses it as like a repeat sprintability thing. It's
Exactly.
different if you are trying to we are trying to get them to top end speed
Yeah.
versus we are all right, we built some speed, now we're trying to get some repeatability of that.
Yeah. And that's where the long acceleration and the speed gate golf provides us with context because they act as accumulation phases for us. And that's, the concept of step load. So if guys are listening to this or watching this on YouTube, for YouTube purposes, we can imagine we've got a gradual slope of acceleration. And it's just a gradual rise, a nice gradual incline, because then underneath that, we're 2 times body weight at a job. So for every step, we start to accumulate speed. We're accumulating stress and we're accumulating, think Newton's third law, that reactive element. So by the time we're 8 to 10 steps in, we're already operating in a relaxed state at a higher intensity that we can't find anywhere else. And because of the volume nature of the submaximal volumes that players do, especially in like field sports, rugby, you do 20K a week just running around in sport practice, that it's actually it's an intensity that sits supramaximal to the average intensity of match play. And we can then start to accumulate volume there and reap the benefits really quickly while staying relaxed. Because if we're not relaxed, we shorten, but our musculature shortens and our ability to be reflexive and relax, it tightens us up. And if we tighten up, we lose length, we lose stiffness and reactivity on the ground. So you could not do this, but then you could tear a calf and then you'll get told, oh, you've got a weak calf. You haven't got a weak calf. You never had a weak calf. You just can't handle speed or
Yeah.
even submaximal speed. So if we think then, if you were to do long accelerations, you just block it out. You do the first 20, for example, with one cone. That's kind of like your build in. And then you've got 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. And then so you know those 3 10-yard brackets are going to be our areas where we're getting work. And you can, for argument's sake, if you wanted just to run 50s, well, you would start at 80, 85, 90% perceived effort. You just wave load it like Louis did with the West Side method. You just
Yeah.
wave load it week to week. And then you can do that for your first cycle and you'll PB. You can do that once a week and you'll probably PB for most if you strip the junk volume out everywhere else because you're relaxing the system. Or you could run a condensed model of that, which is where we start looking at specific and the special speed models where I need to, if I get an athlete 10 meters per second, 23 mile an hour between 40 and 50, we need to do that between 30 and 40 without disrupting acceleration too much because we
Yeah.
can't fight too hard at the front end. So that's when we would use speed gate golf to build out to 20.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where we lengthen out that acceleration and sandwich it in. And I think it's really powerful because you're operating at untapped levels of intensity that there's so much potentiation that can happen in adaptation. I got guys, some of the crazy ones, Jason, were I got a 124 kilo second row rugby player who was missing a sesamoid bone in his foot, right? 22 mile an hour in 40 meters.
That's a lot of momentum. I don't want
Yeah,
to get hit by that guy.
yeah. He was missing the sesamoid bone in his foot. We never ran fast. We built speed,
Yeah.
and that
When
and
you
that's
are, I guess, when you're doing that, how many times a week might you incorporate, say, like those longer accelerations? And then the other part of it would be tracking yardage, because a lot of times, like you said, people go by like the total yardage.
yeah.
But if there is like that slower buildup, how are you tracking the yardage?
Yeah, I love that. So if we go typical phase one off-season model, because it's the safest place for coaches to play in,
Yep. Let's just where are we starting from? Yep.
Yeah, phase one off-season model, we'll work complementary barbell cycles of explosive strength, and we'll be doing long accelerations twice a week. And we will be looking at if we just stay at 50, because for the first 3 weeks, and this is another thing, I think with field sport athletes, we should be using shorter cycles. We shouldn't be using 4, 6, 8 weeks. We should be using 2 to 3 week cycles because when we start to unlock this area of exposure, the athletes become really fragile, and we need to refresh the systems quicker. So using condensed block periodization, 2 to 3, so we want 21 days, roughly 21 days
Mm-hmm.
is a really nice place to play with. And we would be using block one, say we got 50 yards. We want to be starting to try and accumulate steps at the red zone, which is the 40 to 50. So those are the numbers that I'm going to be looking at. And if you do 3 sets of, build up to like 3 sets of 3 runs, then you're going to get, for a given athlete, for example, in that last 10 meters, 2 to 3 steps in there, 10 meters roughly, maybe even a fourth contact. So then 4 times 3 times 3. There's your working. That's what you've got in the locker, because that's that accumulation. So we want to use that. And if we're slowly starting to see increases of speed there, then there's two things that we can either do. We reduce it, so we move it 5 yards left,
Mm-hmm.
inward, closer to the zero. Or if we've got more time, if we're in a 4 month off season, let's do another few weeks. Let's see if we can
Yeah.
build this into the body. And bearing in mind, if we take someone from 9 meters per second to 10 meters per second in that's 10% increase. You can pat yourself on the back and say, well done. You need to get out of that phase quicker then, because that's 10% improvement. Like,
Yeah, that's huge.
yeah, then your job is to start using it. So if you get this like, boom, this kid's flying 3 weeks in, get out of Dodge as quick as you can and move into the next progressive phase where you're starting to understand, well, can we shorten it to the left and not sacrifice anything? Shorten it to the left again. And then and what you would do is you would sequence the blocks based on the parameter of speed you want to change. So we would have that maximum velocity. So supramax gain distance velocity for a term. I just made that up. That sounds really
I
good.
love it.
It makes
Patent it.
sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So supramax, that's not even in the book. Edits, right?
Uh-oh. Appendix coming.
So supramaximal game distance is then we need to try and convert that to maximal game distance. It's the same as using eccentric overloads. We're just using speed overloads. And it's those, that's what I loved about working through this and understanding this is when the first light bulb moment that I had when developing speed, because not a track coach couldn't tell me how to develop team sport speed. They just couldn't. I was like, if stress is the same and progressive overload is the same, well, let's start applying principles of developing barbell strength to running. But we have to get athletes used to running first. And then that was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's general speed. And that took like 12 years to get to there.
Tell you what, you really got my brain thinking because we have about like 35 yards max in a parking lot that we can
Yeah.
use. And if I have kids, if I say, all right, we're running 30s today, hard as you can,
Yeah.
they are inevitably slower from 20 to 30 than they
Yeah.
are if I say, build up. Once you get here, shift into another gear. Once you get here, shift into another gear.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of once you get that, then start bringing it backwards the other direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I just had Mike Widango on recently, and he
He's
said, like,
amazing.
yeah, a good 10 doesn't equal a good 20, doesn't equal a good 30, doesn't equal a good 40.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we think about, all right, go 0 to 10, then 10 to 20, then 20 to, but really, the way you're talking about, it's like, all right, let's build that up with still like smart accumulation and then go back the other way. I love that idea.
Um, because you can't escape. You can't get faster from bad acceleration.
No, you cannot.
And
You can't
that's
escape it. Yep. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what's needs to be taught. And do you know what I got? I basically ripped off. If any of your listeners have Special Strength Training Manual by Verkhoshansky, it's in there because they used 120-meter long accelerations for their 100-meter sprinters as a special strength exercise.
I'll check that out. I have it at work. I'm at home
It's
right
in
now,
there.
but I will check it out tomorrow when
Yeah,
I get there. Yeah.
100, but they used to use 120 meters.
Yeah.
And where you get like a lot, you would have your acceleration day, your max speed day, and then like your special endurance day. The problem with that is that obviously with your special endurance, you're trying to create the ability to endure speed at greater distances. So basically like the vomit comet, pretty much. Whereas the way that the Soviets looked at it was actually how efficient can we make speed as a function of time, which is a completely different idea.
Yeah.
And so they used it, special strength. And when we look at the idea and the construct around special strength, is that we for a long time we think that a special strength exercise or is um, something that mimics a specific joint angle in the amplitude, the five criteria dynamics correspondence, which it does, but also um, average velocity is considered as a special strength parameter. So it goes all the way up. It's in the book. It goes all the way. I love talking about special strength and teaching it. It goes all the way up, and it's bioenergetic, biomotor, and then that attributes to acyclic and cyclic skills, of which one side is average velocity. So that's why
Yeah.
speed golf works so well, because speed gate golf is special strength training. Long acceleration is special strength training because the special strength exercise is a sub-maximal variation of the competition exercise, which is sprinting as fast as fuck.
Yes, it
Basically,
is.
running really fast, Jason. So it just
That's,
opens the door.
I did want to get into you. You made a post how long ago, and I think it was the person was a skier, but all of the like specific types of training they were doing, like they were on a trampoline, and it was basically it reminded me of like the Jay Schrader like freak of training videos with Adam Archuleta, where they're doing
Yeah,
like the low like squat jumps, where they're basically just holding the position and lifting their knees up off the
yeah,
ground. And I thought about that, and even like I'll let you explain some of this stuff and then explain why it is so appropriate for that type of thing and how that type of training then should eventually like get applied into a program.
yeah. It's actually I've got the InnoSport book before they shut the website down. And what's really useful about the system, again, and there's a book in writing called The Neurology of Speed. It's probably going to be the third book because writing a book has created a few more. And like the understanding of how the brain creates movement is huge. And so, from an instinctive, because movement's created in the brain, not created in the legs and the arms. And so, from an instinctive point of view, from neurology of movement, our first function for our brain is to swallow. So, and that's a reflexive mechanism. So, when we understand how the reflexive mechanisms of movement are created, we can start to understand how we can apply them in a special strength situation, which is what those exercises are. Now, there's a trap that people can fall in thinking that they put a band on everything and becomes a circus exercise, right? But this downhill skier, I forgot her name, Italian girl, and what she was using, the coach was using very cleverly, so dropping onto the trampoline. And trampettes are a really underutilized tool because of how they stimulate the reflexive nature, because they do it's physics, so they do the opposite of what you see. So because you jump on it, and that the trampoline will decrease its height to the ground. What that will do, there'll be an equal and opposite effect to the elastic properties in the body. So have you ever been like your audience? Have you ever just jumped on a trampoline and then just test your counter movement jump? You will fly because of the acute potentiation. So it does the opposite of what we think. We think landing on a trampoline is actually slowing us down. We look slower, but it's speeding us up. So then she will create the oscillations within it. And that's in super training, the oscillatory types of contractions of where we can start to manipulate the functional patterns of strength. So we've got the rate coding, we've got the coordinate. So the rate coding, the amount of motor units that are firing, we've got the coordination of the way the muscle structures are working and the way the limbs are working. And then you just fucking supercharge it. And preparing her for downhill skiing, so much of that is just reflexive because you have to think about the action itself. You're strapped in, throwing yourself down a mountain as fast as you can, trying to go in and out of things. Like, sounds like the greatest sport ever. Um,
Yeah.
but like, So from from a program perspective, it's there's two rules. I was speaking Joseph Johnson, Ultimate Athlete Concept. He would be a great guest for you to get on. He's a cool guy. He
I'll reach out to him. Yeah.
yeah, he he knew yes, he knew all the guys. He publishes all their books, and I was chatting with him, and he said the general rule of thumb with long-term athletic development is to delay the effects of general training for as long as possible, which is why the 1 by 20 method is so good. Delay the effects of general training as long as possible, whilst implementing the special strength characteristics of movement. So that's you covered till like 18, 19. And you athletes will be a freak by then. But then as we start to create highly more specialized athletes, that's when we need to start considering what magnitude of intensity are we exposing them to? And that's a really high end intensity magnitude from and not from and this is the consideration that's really important to make a clear distinction is that the density of the intensity that is being applied. So, for example, an athlete that can run at 23 miles an hour, that's a load of intensity. But how did they get there? They got there through 23, 24 submaximal steps.
Mhm.
Providing a 90 centimeter depth jump, the rate of loading is ridiculous compared to that. But then they'll say, well, depth jump's only 4 times, 5 times body weight or whatever. But there's no momentum. There's no stored elastic energy. The elastic energy is not working for you then. So it's like the ground is coming. And
Yes,
so
it is.
and
Fast.
that's why if you do like the trumpet stuff, I used to do a lot of I was rehabbing uh, plantar fasciitis years ago. I put my foot in a hole, a pothole, sprinting, and I tore my plantar fascia, and it was ridiculous. It was so painful, and I used to use the trumpet to create oscillations. I'd do a split lunge, and it was on the front, bah, 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 for time sets to develop capacity in that area. Rehab me up absolutely fine because they've been trumpets being used for a long period of time. But what I was trying to do is develop specific work capacity of elastic, reflexive nature, and I built up to doing 2 to 3 sets of 10 seconds, 6 to 10 seconds, which is a
10
long.
seconds is a lot when you're doing something like that. People don't realize like you can get 6 seconds, you're starting to get like tired. Like your brain is like the coordination starts to go. 10
Yeah,
seconds is a long time. Yeah.
yeah, 100%. And so when you're trying to, and I encourage coaches to really start to try and push, um, carefully push the boundaries of their programs by removing the emphasis of general training to accommodate specific training. We just have to be really careful by not trying to go too far too soon. You have to
Yeah.
let the adaptation come and then adjust to it.
Well said. Well, I don't want to take up much more of your time, Sam. I do appreciate it. Where can people get your book?
Amazon. If they type in Sam Portland and Sports Speed System, it will come on Amazon. We are global now. That was one thing I learned writing the book is that you get it up on Amazon. I had to pay some guy like $350 to put it on Amazon because I didn't have a clue. And then you have to pay more money to get it all over the world. So they're like, oh, we do ship worldwide, like all these territories. And then I had someone in
Yeah.
Northern Ireland said, I can't get it. I'm like, well, what the fuck do you mean you can't get it? I could throw it to you. And
Yeah.
he's like, they don't ship. So then I had to speak to this guy. He's like, oh, yeah, you need this provider to then do it through Amazon there.
That's
So,
the stuff about writing a book that you don't learn right away.
yeah. And it was just like, um, and yeah, so it's on Amazon. It's what is it? It's about in the UK it's 24.99, which is basically the cheapest I could put it at, to try and get it out there for everyone. And the other thing, just thinking about some of the things that come to mind when writing a book, like I felt I was so stupid. Like I was having like micro mental breakdowns on a daily basis because I got so far into it. It's like 400 pages. Like I was so far into these topics and these subtopics, and I was like, nah, no one's gonna buy that. Like it became so real, the imposter syndrome, because
Yeah,
you've gone through this process, like you lived through it. And I was chatting to my therapist, and I was like, I now have some glimpse as to why Van Gogh cut his ear off, because like these pursuits make you insane. Like it would just took over my life. Like I was waking up with like mild panic attacks because I was like, oh, I've not put that bit in, I've not put this bit in, and it just consumes everything that you do. But they're not like the when I first got it in the post, I was like, I didn't actually compute how big 400 pages was. It was just a Google Doc for like a year and a half. And then I was
that
like,
is a lot of pages. That's
it
a real
came,
book. That's not your like 70 page and it's
no,
like a
it,
postcard size thing. Yeah,
and it
there it
came through.
is.
And I was like, I bought five for myself to like give away as author's copies and stuff. And I was like, holy fuck, like that's a proper book. And I laughed. I was like, nah, stop it. Do you know there was this whole level of disbelief, but it's opened up some wonderful things. And I got a message from the messages I've had from people who have bought it have been amazing. And I got one was really humbling. A lad, a young coach from India bought it as well, from like a rural part in India, had bought it, and I was like, wow, that's the power of a book. That's what you can do, and
That's awesome.
yeah, it was really cool. Some proud moments come out of it. Like I'm not need to learn. I think coaches need to learn to be proud of what they do more. And this is one for me. I'm learning to be proud of it. So
Absolutely. Well, congratulations again.
thanks for inviting
All
me
right.
back on. It's been
Yeah,
awesome.
we will do it again sometime.
Yeah, 100%, mate. 100%.